What my sound preferences are. I like bass. And if it can have quantity and quality, yeah, I'm rocking it. Especially mid bass. I like the slam over the sub bass rumble. I like my mids super clean. Not a big fan of overly colored, overly thick, overly warm mids. Not a big fan of that. And highs that are very sweet and seem to be able to keep up without ever being overbearing or in your face. So hello again. Today I'm here and back again talking about the Hisenior MEGA5EST. Now I did the review on this one 10 months ago, and that was the original, and since then there has been a few changes. There has been rumors of maybe driver changes, but there's definitely been tuning changes, and that's quite evident with the graph that I will pull up here. And that also had to play into some of the criticisms I had about the original set, and you know what's changed and what's tuning, and let's get into that a little bit. So the tuning has certainly changed, and my two old criticisms I'll go over and see if those were addressed in this new 7th anniversary edition. What else changed? Well, I changed. I'm finding myself enjoying less V-shaped tuning with higher pinna gains. It just doesn't sound natural to me anymore. Though I do enjoy that excitement in the initial listen, it quickly wears off. And I'm getting more picky when it comes to bass quality. And again, I always take quality over quantity. And sources for me. I've added a whole bunch of sources and changed some up as well. So for me, I have a lot more sources I get to pick, and I can find synergy with IAMs. Now, talking about those two old criticisms, I actually had to go back and watch my original video and then read my notes. And the two things that stood out for me from the original MEGA5EST was the bass. The bass driver, I said, lacks definition, mid-bass, attack, and decay. Well, some of that is obviously biased towards my personal preference of faster, speedier bass. And we'll talk about that dynamic driver. Secondly was I found the upper treble, the mid treble maybe, lacked cohesion with the ESTs. They sounded disconnected. It sounded like you had upper mids, and then you had these ESTs spitting a little bit at the very top end. And there was something missing in the middle. And you can see again by the graph, they've added more information in there. Now, in part, I think that a lot of this, and I gotta give kudos to Hisenior, they seem to be one of these companies that actually do listen to feedback, to reviewers. So in no small part, from me, from Canucks Audioholics, and others, many others, I think Hisenior did take some of that feedback and incorporated it into these later tunings. Now, some new impressions from me listening to the 7th anniversary MEGA5 EST. What did I think? Well, let's talk about one of the tracks that I use for staging. Rackham Live is the version from Dead Can Dance. Here I found the stage very similar, but maybe a little bit more airy on the top end when it came to presenting and layering in the stage. Do you get a really good sense of this being in a massive venue, or does it sound like it's in a very large studio? And that's kind of how the MEGA5 EST presents to me. It's doing a pretty good job of the stage, but again, it doesn't give you that huge sense of being like in the audience at a live concert. So I thought I did a pretty good job, but definitely not standout, that's for sure. At that kind of, when I was starting to listen to some tracks, and again, I was switching sources here at this point too. I switched out the Hibi FD5, the new desktop system, because it presents too mid-forward with this IM. It pushes the vocals forward and it drowns out the instrumental and the bass, because it just pushes it just that added little bit out forward. So I switched out to the Astle & Kern Con Max, where I know this DAP, this source, has very nice transients. It is very clean. It is very detailed. And the mids are extremely neutral, if not pushed back, recessed a slight tad, kind of the opposite of the Hibi. And it was a really good pairing with this IM, and overall the MEGA5 EST became incredibly balanced. It was a beautiful presentation at that point. So that's where I stuck with the rest of my listening impressions. One of the tracks that I also use for nuances to pick up the little micro details, House of the Rising Sun by Joan Baez. She has a super unique voice, and when she sings, there is a warbling to her vocals, and it should be standout and easily discernible. I find it is not on this set. And when I was doing some comparisons to maybe like the Pen-On 10th, I found the Pen-On 10th at the same price point, I'm going to say. More resolving, vocals and instrumental has better timbre yet, and a more natural tonality, but the big difference was the micro details, and again, how you could pick up the nuances in her voice and how it actually presented, and stage as well. That was another big one. And in comparison to another one that you unfortunately can't buy anymore, which was the Zen's Mangered Up, I thought the vocals, the tonality of the overall two IMs are very close. But again, here micro details were better on the up than the 5 EST. Instrumental timbre stage, I think all again were improved on the up. Now, why am I comparing it to other hybrid IMs with EST? Well, I just answered that question to see if the implementation in the Mega 5 EST was done correctly. And I'll address that in the conclusion, I think. So, last track impression, One Day in Your Life by One Day in Your Life by 5440. The 5 EST sounds, again, very, very balanced and unoffensive overall in the mix. In comparison, the up and A-B comparison, it was easy to hear what I think the Hisenior for me is missing. And that has to do with excitement and the overall correct vocal tonality. The 5 EST for me just sounds plain and boring. And I do find that on certain sets, like the A Fool Performer 8, the Cadenza 4 from Let's Sure. They're all very balanced, but what I find missing for me is the engagement factor, the excitement factor. And I can see why this set gets a lot of attention is because maybe some other people don't have another set that does what this set does. And for what it does do, giving you that very, very linear, very smooth, very balanced, unoffensive playback, it could be a real asset into your collection for sure. Okay, let's talk about one of those things that I was addressing in my original criticisms of the first set, that EST, what I call disconnect. Is it still there? No, I don't think so. I think Hisenior fixed a lot of that by adding in some more energy up top. I think it is now very, very well-rounded. Some of the instrumental I find, though, up top is still a little bit soft. It lacks a proper bite to like violins and hi-hats and cymbals. It's pretty good, but I could use a little bit more. And then when you get that EST to chime in on the top end, I think it does a pretty good job there too. I think the EST implementation in the Mega 5 EST now is very well done. I was listening to another track, Soul Tech, A Need in Me by Boohim in Session. Bass lacks definition and attack. It's too soft. Notes are too rounded, like I find a little bit in the top end, but on a much larger scale. And in comparison, listening to, again, some of my other IMs, it was easy to pick out for me what the dynamic driver in the 5 EST is not doing. And again, this isn't now part of my bias of liking something more, liking faster, speedier bass. This really has to do with critical listening to this dynamic driver and its its overall tonality, and that's where I find it lacking. I do. It's missing a natural sounding decay to the notes. It's lacking definition and texture to the bass. Overall, it's just a really soft bass presentation. While some people actually might not, where some people actually might really enjoy that presentation, I don't think it sounds the way it was intended, the way the music was to be intendedly interpreted in its playback. So I think there should be some more sharpness to the notes, more decay to the bass hits, where you could pick out the resonances of drums and the secondary harmonics. It's just kind of missing out of this bass driver. I think overall thoughts at $549 on sale, $649 regular. I think this Mega 5 EST 7th anniversary edition is extremely well tuned in its overall balancing, in its unoffensiveness in a hybrid tribrid IAM. So did it address my concerns? Yes and no. The top end is fixed, in my opinion. I wouldn't touch anything there, but maybe, again, just adding something in the top end to give it a little bit more crispness and definition to hi-hats and cymbals and upper harmonic strings, instruments, stuff like that. That mid treble and EST implementation gap, I think, is gone. It's done really, really well there. And for the most part, I really enjoy the top end of the set. I never did talk too much here in this second take of this IM of its vocal presentation. But one thing I did kind of notice switching out in sources was that the Mega 5 EST is very source selective. You could, in a good way, it picks up the source. So if I had a mid-forward source like the Hibby, it brought it out. And that's really a big compliment to an IM that is that open and neutral and revealing that it can do that. So kudos to Hisenior for producing an IM that is that transparent. And so the mids, for me, when I picked the right source, no complaints really of the tonality, the timbre of the vocals and instruments in the entire mid-range, which, as you know, does pretty much 80% of the entire musical spectrum. So not really any complaints there. The bass, though, is the no. The bass still lacks definition, note weight, and just overall tonality for me for a properly executed bottom end. I think overall the Mega 5 EST 7th Anniversary Edition is a great overall safe, unoffensive hybrid IM. I'm going to say that again. Nothing is overly boosted or out of proportion. The reason you would buy a hybrid for me, or an EST tribrid, even more especially, would be because it can do more. It should be able to let you hear more of the music, the nuances, the emotion of the music, the soul of the song, and the love that went into its production. The Mega 5 EST 7th Anniversary, for me, does not elicit an emotional response. There is, though I do find it a charming IM to listen to, there is zero wow factor for me. The addition of the ESTs over the Mega 5 and the implementation that was done is done really well. And it's done as good as the ZenZup and the The Audio Oracle. So I think that when you're adding ESTs, you should be trying to not just make a safer tuning, though. I think you should be making something that has more special sauce, that does something different that you don't already have. And I think in this case, it does add a little into the special sauce. But the overall softer tuning probably doesn't play to its strength as much as it should. Just some final thoughts. It's good to see Hisenior listening to feedback and constantly keep improving in its tunings and its offerings. For instance, I see that this Pelican 1010 case that's big and heavy and clunky, nice to protect your set, but not very practical. And I see Hisenior switching out to these little puck-style leather cases, which is very welcome to me, and they're quite usable and beautiful. So kudos to you, Hisenior. I'm not going to talk about that white whale cable because I still think it's a horrible pairing, especially with the 5EST. It seemed to exasperate the bottom end muddiness and made it worse. A good quality SPC cable did wonders for me on this set. I think personally, Hisenior offers really high quality gear, and I do still find myself rooting for this lesser known brand, and I do look forward to their future releases they keep teasing about. And while I would say this one again is too safe for me, I think many will find its kind of laid back, smooth nature to their liking. And I can totally see the appeal of the Mega 5 EST. 7th anniversary. This is a Tone Deaf Monk. Thanks for watching.